welcome to the SolarIMG podcast, and today we've got a very special returning guest. Some of you may remember Arnie Gundersen from one of our previous podcasts and from the videos at Fairewinds.com. He is the chief engineer at Fairewinds Associates. Thanks for coming on the podcast on such short notice while you're traveling, Arnie.
Hi, thanks for having me. Sorry about the quality because I'm on a cell phone, but looking forward to talking to you.
Now, today it's been getting a little bit of mainstream media attention that there's problems at Reactor 2. They did the endoscopy thing. I'm not too, up on the up and up. I was hoping you could please tell our listeners what's up.
Well, it's about time mainstream media paid a little attention to Reactor 2 and Fukushima in general. What they've been able to do is get into the reactor building at Unit 2. And, of course, Reactor building is that box, and Unit 2 is the only one that still has a box. The others got blown to smithereens. So they got into the reactor building and were able to put an endoscope down into the containment, not into the reactor, but into the containment. So, they've entered the dry well, and then they're heading down the side of the vessel toward the suppression pool. And they had expected to find water at 5 meters and didn't find any, and 4 meters and didn't find any, and 3 and 2 and 1, and they didn't find any water until they got to 60 centimeters. Now that's about 2 feet. So there's only 2 feet of water in the bottom of the containment. So the question becomes, where's it going? Because they're pouring in 5 to 10 tons of water a day, and they had expected that it would be there would be a high water level, and if it's high in the containment, they were hoping that it would run into the nuclear reactor as well, and they could have 5 or 4 meters of water in the nuclear reactor. Well, the problem is, without that amount of water for shielding, it will be very difficult to remove any nuclear fuel. There's 2 pieces. The endoscope determined that there wasn't much water, and 60 centimeters corresponds roughly to the lower lip of the downcomer leg into the suppression pool. So I think it's pretty clear that there's damage in the suppression pool in Unit 2. Now that was postulated. I know I talked about it, but others did too. There was an explosion in Unit 2, and it was likely to be in that leg between the dry well and the suppression pool. And it looks like that's the case. So they're pouring water into the nuclear reactor. It's running out somehow, and is now not in the containment either. So it's leaking out of the containment. Now, the other piece of that was, in addition to the endoscope, they also were able to put in a radiation detector. And they couldn't put them in together, which is too bad. But as the lower they got, the higher the radiation levels got, which clearly indicates that the nuclear core has slumped and is in the bottom of the reactor and also in the bottom of the containment. So it definitely indicates a meltdown. The numbers they got are absolutely astronomical. 70 sieverts an hour, and you got to slap 2 zeros on the end of that to get to rem. So it's 7,000 rem. And 1,000 will cause neurological damage and kill you in about 15, 20 minutes. So we are well over lethal exposures in a very short time. Now, this late, the accident is now almost 13 months old now, and so to see this high a level of radiation that far into the accident means that a lot of the radiation has decayed away. More than half of it disappeared in the first year. But at this point now, it will decay very slowly. The cesiums will decay, half of the cesium, cesium-134, will decay pretty quickly over the next 10 years. Cobalt-60 will decay over the next 50 years. But still, cesium-137, which is a nasty isotope, is going to be hanging around for 300 years. So this radiation that they're detecting is not going to go away. It's higher than in outer space, and of course we all know that space probes are heavily shielded because radiation damages the electronics. So the second concern here is how are we going to remove this even with a robot? Because with these high radiation fields, it'll wreck the integrated the circuits that are inside the robot. So it's really been a severe setback to dismantle the plant. Nobody really knows how to handle these kinds of exposures outside of in a hot cell facility that's designed for it. This was never designed for it. So I guess my takeaway on it is a couple things. One is it just amped up the cost. This is if it was 10 billion, it's probably 15 billion now on just that reactor. Each of these reactors is going to experience the same thing. So the cost is up, and two, the time has grown. Whatever they thought they could do is now going to take longer. But I think the $64,000 question here is, where is the core? How much of it's in the nuclear reactor, and how much of it fell through the nuclear reactor? I believe through those control rod drive holes in the bottom of the reactor. How much of it's still in the nuclear reactor, and how much of it is in the is on the bottom of the dry well? We know it's low, we know it's slumped, but exactly what part is still in the vessel and how much is on the floor is really unknown. The other piece of this is, where is the water going? It's obviously leaking into other buildings, the turbine hall, and I was able to get a document from a General Electric startup engineer. And it's an old document. It dates to the early the early 80s, and the document said that the penetrations between the containment and other buildings are likely to fail in the event of an accident in a Mark I containment. Well, what that means is that in the incredible heat and the incredible pressure they had in the containment, not only did the lid of the containment lift, like I talk about on the Fairewinds video, but in addition, probably within 4 or 5, maybe 6 days, the penetrations where the electrical wires come in started to rot out. It's exacerbated because it's salt water. So you've got rubber penetrations going through a concrete containment, and with high heat, high radiation, high humidity, and high pressure, and on top of that, oh by the way, we're putting salt water on the penetration. So my guess is the penetrations are failing as well, allowing all of that water, 5 tons a day or more, to leak into other buildings.
So I guess, wow, you went over to Japan and you did the samples. That's well covered on Fairewinds in your latest video, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. But at the beginning, when we realized that this was a real serious situation, we were kind of derided and called paranoid, and, it's not even nearly as bad as Chernobyl, some people said. But now the mainstream media is starting to come out with this. Why now?
Yeah, I was attacked by Rush Limbaugh on radio. After I was on CNN once or twice, he was calling me a fearmonger. And of course, the time has proven that, if anything, I was conservative. Why now is a really good question. I think the mainstream media had in their mind that this is a problem that's going to go away. And it's not going away. It's like one of these horror movies where the creature keeps coming up from the grave. They claim it's in cold shutdown, and all at once we have problems like this. I think TEPCO has actually created this problem by trying to minimize the problem. If if they had said immediately, or even 6 months later, that this is a real bad problem and we're in it for a 50-year slog here, that would have been one thing. But they've always said, well, we're getting close to getting it under control, and they were going to wrestle this bucking bronco to the ground. But it's not happening, and it can't happen. The laws of physics are telling us that this is a 50-year battle, and in the end, they're going to spend a lot of money, and in the end, they're going to dismantle the plant. But between now and year 1 and year 50, it's going to cost a lot of radiation exposure to workers, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and create a lot of technology. There's nothing on the market now that can even begin to handle the problems they're facing. So this is, probably I'm not sure how old you are, but when you have grandkids, they'll still be watching the Fukushima decommissioning.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. Well, a lot of the monitoring stations have been taken down, and they've stopped doing a lot of the air monitoring and the rain monitoring. Some of the folks who are responsible for this have acknowledged that they've had communications problems. And when I tried, I'm used to, having a wonderful relationship with the powers that be. But when I, tried to get somebody to speak about this, it was a 3-month battle, and it was very heavily managed. And I just wasn't used to that or expecting that. People are really concerned about the water, especially in Hawaii. I know people who love to scuba dive and surf and whatnot. People are actually seriously considering relocating from Hawaii. I think this may be a kind of a rash idea, but how can people minimize their risk in these contaminated areas?
Well, I think the ocean's a big place, and there's an enormous amount of cesium leaking into it at Fukushima, but of course it does get diluted by the time it gets to Hawaii. I guess I'm more worried about the bioaccumulation up the food chain, and seeing top predators like tuna and salmon and barracuda and things like that become contaminated over the next 2, 3, 4 years with increasingly high amounts of cesium. What you said is right on, though. There's no monitoring of this. The last I heard, the U.S. government had monitored about 300 fish in the last year total. So clearly we're importing tens of millions, and we're only looking at 200. So we're not going to. We have a system designed not to find the contamination problem. The other piece of this is the debris field is heading toward Hawaii and the West Coast. Most of that debris came from the tsunami, and the tsunami hit up and down the coast. So it's not all Fukushima